Hey there, thanks for joining us for Morning Manna, 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting Edition. It's been such a privilege to be with you this week. We're wrapping up, but this week we've built all of our time together around this truth. Devotion to Christ is the place where the human heart is most satisfied. We recently started reading the Bible together as a church, and something stood out to me as I was reading Genesis. The first two chapters describe creation. God created the heavens and the earth. He created Adam from dust, and then God rested. And then we know where the story goes. Soon, the ones he created in his image would do the one thing he told them not to do, and they'd sin, and sin would enter the world. Genesis 3:8 says, "The man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden." They knew the sound of God's footsteps in the garden. That's kind of cool. And I think they recognized it because they had heard them before. But this time was different. This time, Adam and Eve were filled with shame and they hid when they heard God call them. Because of sin, man was no longer allowed to be in a place where they were in perfect communion with God. As I read on, there's of course the story of Cain and Abel, and then 7 generations of Adam's children who had children, who had children, who had children, who had children, and they all lived a really long time. Sometimes when I'm reading through those genealogies, it can feel tedious. But there were 2 verses that stood out to me in chapters 5 and 6. Genesis 5:24 says, Enoch walked with God. Then he was not there because God took him. We learn about Enoch's life, just a snippet, but after Enoch was 65, he became a father and he began walking with God. Then there are 7 generations of descendants from Adam listed, but in all of those generations, the only one that has anything noted about them is Enoch, and it says that he walked with God, which means he lived and acted in ways that obeyed and honored God. Then a few verses later in Genesis chapter 6, we get to verse 9 and it says, "These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God." Again, many generations of Adam's descendants were listed, but it's only said of Enoch and of Noah that they walked with God. And as I read this, it occurred to me that if these men walked with God, it was possible. God didn't stop walking with man after the garden. It was man who stopped walking with God. By Noah's generation, the hearts of men were so wicked that God destroyed the earth. But Noah chose to reject the lifestyles that literally every other person on the planet was living, and instead chose to walk with God. I want to finish our time this week together by going back to the place where we started. We asked God to inspire us to wholeheartedly turn to Him, to enable us to let go of any idols, sins, excuses, distractions. Walking with God means choosing to act in ways that honor Him, and it also means choosing not to do things that dishonor Him. All week long, we've talked about this idea that being devoted to Christ, it's the place where our hearts are most satisfied. And I keep feeling God challenge us to grow up a little by making the decisions to let go of some of the things that no longer reflect our love for Him. We have a week left in our journey of prayer and fasting. Let's keep pursuing Him. Keep pressing in. Let's not leave anything on the table. Have a great weekend.